So, welcome everyone. It's been a month since I had my live stream, so I thought it might be time to have another live stream and answer a bunch of questions I have got from my Brazilian community and from other people. To make this a little bit interesting, I'm also going to keep continuing testing my Threadripper 1920X, which I'm currently working on to compare with the Xeon EFI 2696 V2 and the Xeon EFI 2678 V3. It would be interesting to see how three different CPUs with the 12 cores each will be comparing to each other, and of course I will compare them to Ryzen 5 5600X to see how a 6-core is decimating three different 12-core CPUs. So first of all, I would need to know how is the stream going, how is the sound, and how is the video. If everything is fine, I guess I will start with running some benchmarks on my Threadripper and trying to answer some questions. I see that people are slowly joining, which is really nice. I didn't expect to have many viewers on this sunny Sunday, so hopefully we will get some people and some questions and something interesting. So it would be really nice if someone could tell me how the sound is going on, because I have done some modifications in my setup and I'm not sure if it is working well. Okay, for me all is ok. Perfect. So let's take a look. I need to test a few more games for my Threadripper, which is Watch Dogs Legion. Then I need to test Dirt Rally 2. I need to test Call of Duty Modern Warfare and Mafia 2 and DSC World. The rest I have already tested, so I guess we're gonna start with the easiest one, which is Watch Dogs Legion, because there is a built-in benchmark. Let's start MSI Afterburner so I can have my beautiful overlay. Here goes the MSI Afterburner, the annoying notification as usual, going to Ubisoft Connect. They have renamed the Ubisoft launcher to Ubisoft Connect for some stupid reason. And for a while, the website which provided the Ubisoft Connect download was with the expired SSL certificate, which is kind of stupid. Okay, so Watch Dogs Legion, I think I did not launch the game on this computer yet, so I need to locate the installed game. Let's find it. It's in the Ubisoft folder, should be here. Here we go. Now it's gonna take some time to validate the game files, but let's hope it's gonna be rather soon. All done. Okay. Now let's launch the game, and while the game is launching, let me see if I have some questions to answer. Maybe I'm wrong, but am I wrong or in gaming that 2678 V3 remains better than the 1920X in gaming at 1440p? Well, it is a rather like a question which doesn't have a straight answer. It depends on what game you play and what graphics card you use, because I do not want to disclose too much information about my test results at the moment, because I will make a full video with comparison between three CPUs. But in short, no. In some games, Xeon will be better. In other games, Threadripper is kind of good. Okay, let's see what I have from my Brazilian questions, or questions from Brazil. The first question, what is your professional area? I think I have answered this question already a bunch of times. I have a full-time work where I work as a software engineer or software developer, and YouTube is my hobby, or at least it started like a hobby business or like a hobby project. And right now I have even my company, which is focusing on assembling computers and selling different services. So I would say this is a hobby business, since it's actually a business at the moment. On YouTube, though, I don't make any money, at least not yet. I rather invest money in YouTube to buy different stuff, different gear to be able to make videos. What X399 board are you using? I have MSI Mag Creation X399. This is a really expensive motherboard, but for me, I have got combo of motherboard, Threadripper, and Noctua cooler. All of these three I have got just for 150 euros, which was an insanely good deal. The problem was that the guy didn't know if it is still working, and the motherboard was extremely dirty, so I had to vacuum clean it and use a brush to remove all the dust. But it seems to be working just fine. So as you can see on the screen, I was able to achieve DDR4 3333 CL14 with my Threadripper 1920X. In the past, I had in my personal machine Threadripper 1950X, and that one had problems running even DDR4 3200. But since then, the BIOS has been updated multiple times and the memory compatibility was improved a lot. So now I'm able to run DDR4 3333 CL14 no problem. Yeah, that was a really crazy deal for 150 euros getting this Threadripper setup. Have I heard about EFI 2666 V4? Yes, people are constantly asking me about this CPU, but I'm not sure why you're so excited about it, because the price for the CPU is completely ridiculous. Like, when the price goes down, that might be an interesting option, but right now I see nothing to be excited about. Okay, let's go to options. I need to set up a video. Okay, full screen, 1080p, VSync off, FPS limiter off. Let's take a look at quality, DirectX 12, ultra quality. Okay, so all good. Seems like the quality settings were picked up from my last runs, which is good. So now let's run the benchmark, and I actually really triggered with these questions when the game is asking me if I want to run a benchmark. Like, damn, yeah, I want to run the benchmark. And sometimes I assemble a computer and run benchmarks at the same time, and then I click a button, run benchmark, and then I go back to assemble some computers. Then I turn around to check results, and I see that the game is asking me if I really want to run the benchmark. And I just get pissed at it and like, yes, I do want. Okay, so the next question from Brazil. How did the interest in Xeon and Chinese motherboards start? I think I was always interested in different kind of computer hardware, and I was always trying to find the better deals. Even back in the times when I had my first computer, it was AMD DX4100. It was running at 100 megahertz. I was able to test with the different motherboards, and on some motherboards it was able to make 120 megahertz, which was providing a boost in Windows 98. So those were fun times. And after a while I started to be interested in these Xeon CPUs because they happen to be on eBay and AliExpress for good deals, but there were no motherboards for them. So I started to test with the Chinese motherboards to see what we can do about that. And after a while I just figured out that if I keep doing that, I will end up spending too much money and I can't afford that. So I decided to at least start a YouTube channel and share my information with people. So maybe someone can help me, at least by using my AliExpress affiliated links, or maybe share information with me and other stuff like that. Have you experienced stability issues on X99 motherboards? Well, I have experienced stability issues on basically any possible platform, so it is not related strictly to the X99 motherboards. It all depends on what kind of motherboard you use, what kind of CPU you install, but in general, yes, Chinese motherboards, X99 and X79, they are not as good as the branded like MSI, Asus, and the other branded options. Maybe Gigabyte is also worth mentioning. So yeah, with those Chinese X99 boards I got more stability issues than with the branded motherboards. Hello from Brazil, welcome back to MirComputers Hardware, and hello from Sweden. What is the size of the M.2 heatsink that you are replacing the X99 fans with? Okay, people are just asking the same question all the time. I think I have already linked the link to that thingy that I have bought, but let me find it again, and you will see the dimensions from there. By the way, can you hear my keyboard clicking? Is it very annoying or it's okay? Because if it's too annoying, I will try to click as little as possible. The i7 6950X and the Ryzen 7 3700X cost about the same on AliExpress. What would you go with? Of course I would go with the Ryzen. Like, no way I would pick i7 for the same money. That to make that i7 work about the same level as Ryzen, you need to overclock it, and for that overclocking you need a very beefy power supply, and you also need a very good CPU cooler to be able to tame those temperatures. And the X99 is a dead platform. Like, there will be no upgrades, there will be nothing, and AM4 is still alive. The keyboard is okay. Thanks for letting me know. Okay, so the second benchmark of Watch Dogs is over. Now I need to run it for the third time, because I always run every benchmark 3 times, and then I take the average. So in this particular case I will be running Watch Dogs for 9 times, 3 times for each screen resolution. So now I'm gonna copy and paste the link of my heatsink that I'm using for replacing fans on Huananzhi motherboards into the chat. So the ones who are interested, welcome to open the link and take a look at the heatsink. If we look at the dimensions, the size is 70 by 22 by 6 millimeters. But you have to be beware that there is a separator between the fans on the heatsink, and you will not be able to put this M.2 radiator to the very big bottom. There will be like 2 squarish holes where the fans are, and there will be like a splitter over here. So these 2 big holes I was filling up with the thick thermal pads, which works kind of okay. And also, if you have bad airflow in your chassis, replacing these fans with a passive heatsink will decrease your VRM performance. But if you have good airflow in your chassis, the VRM temperatures and performance will improve, while the noise will obviously decrease, because those extra fans are really noisy and really annoying. So going back to the Brazilian questions, did you expect to reach so many people in different countries? Honestly, no, I didn't expect that. Like, I thought that if I'm gonna be making like 1 to 4 videos per month, maybe in a year I will have like 5,000 subscribers. I have got a bit more than 10,000. And also I was very surprised that I have got so many views from Brazil and Latin America, as well as Spain, Italy and Poland. I was expecting that most of the views will be from Australia, like Singapore and other countries where English is a native language, or at least like second native language. So third run for 1080p is over, and now I need to do one last run with the MSI Afterburner, because if I would like to include it into the videos, then I have to have the MSI Afterburner overlay. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna start recording of the run, then I'm enabling MSI Afterburner, and then I'm running the benchmark for one more time. And then now you can see on your screen that my Threadripper 1920X is overclocked to 4 GHz on all 12 cores. And the temperatures are kind of good actually. It's staying under 17 degrees Celsius. Right now it's just 57 in games. Thanks a lot, great help. Well, you're welcome. I hope it helps. So the next question from Brazil: how did Mi 899 come to be? Well, I have got like enormous number of questions of people are asking me, okay, which BIOS I select for this motherboard? Why do I need to undervolt CPUs? How do I use FPT or flash programming tool? How do I use AFO-Win? Well, it was just overwhelming number of questions, which is basically the same question but in different variations. And I tried to answer and help everyone, and it was just taking so much time that I have decided to combine it all together and write a simple application which would have user interface, and people can just scroll down, pick their motherboard, and then pick the BIOS and just flash it. And in long time, it saved me a lot of time, because I can just tell people, okay, you just download Mi 899, select your motherboard and just click flash. That's it. So that saved me a lot of time, and that's why I decided to make it. And then after I made it, I figured out that I actually have some use for it myself. For example, when I assemble budget-friendly gaming computers with those X99 Machinist motherboards or Huananzhi motherboards, it's way easier to just get Mi 899 and flash the desired BIOS, then remember on which flash drive you have which BIOS, then which FPT commands you need to write, which motherboard is working with FPT, which motherboard is working with AFU-Win. Like, it just helping me with my business as well. So the 1080p benchmark run for Watch Dogs Legion is over. Now it's time to go 1440p. And I have got some more questions in the chat. Hello sir, one little question to you. Is Xeon E5-2678v3 for $140 still worth buying? Absolutely no. Like, no way, don't buy it for that money, because Chinese are just trying to gouge the prices as much as possible and get as much profit as possible, but it absolutely is not worth it. For this money you can get Core i5-10400F, and that will be a much better purchase. So now I need to increase the resolution to 1440p, apply it, and then run four more benchmarks, 3 benchmarks to just collect the numbers, and the last benchmark to get the video recording with the MSI Afterburner. I am using an E5-2678v3 with a 6800 XT, 32 gigs of RAM, sub-rand SSD, also to play in ultra wide quad HD. Well, that's a very good combination, and you're lucky that you were able to get 6800 XT. Those graphics cards are not easy to obtain these days. What's up, my Ruski friend? Russia, Russia, Russia. You know how it goes. From Fresno, California, USA. Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I have nothing to do with Russia. And even though you're free to call me Ruski friend, I am not falling up to the expectations. I'm not Russian and I have nothing to do with Russia. What's the point of an 8-core Threadripper 1900X versus Ryzen? Well, the big selling point of Threadripper CPUs is that they have 40 or 44 PCI Express lanes, I don't remember exactly, so you can connect very many PCI Express devices, and they also have quad memory channel configuration. So for workloads, if you can leverage 8 memory channels and you need extra, let's say extra PCI Express storage, or you need multiple graphics card, for example, you can install a compute graphics card. Speaking of compute graphics cards, I have a small teaser. No, it's not this one. I need to find where I put my teaser. Okay, here it goes. Here is something interesting I'm also working on to make a video about. So this is a computer graphics card. This is a Tesla graphics card, and as you can see, there are no video outputs. But if you need such machine for, like, let's say 3D rendering, or for any sorts of like animation or printing, anything like that, then you need extra PCI Express lanes to connect it. And you can see here I have made a custom fan adapter because this thing doesn't have any fans. And I plan to make a video about how to use this beast for gaming and productivity, but for now it is still work in progress. So in that case, Threadripper 1900 will be better than regular Ryzen. Other than that, there is no sense to consider Threadripper instead of Ryzen. I hope that was clear enough. So now I need to go back to my benchmarks, and I need to check how many runs I have actually made. Okay, so this one's the second run. I need one more. Okay, Another question for gaming and streaming and editing: which would you choose, E5-2640 or E5-2660 v3? Was planning to get E5-2697 v3, but its price has gone high. Well, 2660 is obviously a better option, so if you can get it for a good price, definitely go 2660. 2660 has 3.3 GHz turbo, while 2640 has 3.4, but 2660 has memory support for DDR4 2133, while 2640 is only 1866, so overall 2 extra cores and faster memory speed is better for with the 2660, and 2640 is kinda slower. It's easy to obtain GPU, you just need to sell your kidney. And how about those people who don't have kidney? I think X99 will deliver superior rendering performance in video and 3D per dollar and specific multitasking purposes, whereas Ryzen platform is somehow better as regular PC. I disagree with this statement. X99 is only good when it is priced right. Otherwise, Ryzen is always better. Okay, Watch Dogs Legion is never stopping to amuse me. Like, it is crashing on every possible computer I have tested, so I just need to relaunch the game and run the benchmarks again. Did you meddle without election here in America? Just kidding, I couldn't help myself. Sorry, I do not follow American politics and I have no idea what happens with elections in America, so if it was some sort of a joke, I don't get it, like, I'm sorry about that. Have you ever thought of making build videos? Yes, yes, I thought about it, but to make build videos, like, what is the content of a build video? You need to have good graphics to show what is going where, how it looks like, and make nice angles. Right now, unfortunately, I don't have a good video setup, so I can record like a nice package how I do a build, but over there you can see that I have a mini ITX machine where I have installed the it was QTJ2 Mutant on a B365 M80 mini ITX motherboard, and it turns out to be a really capable mini machine which I might be making video about. I just built a dual Xeon E5-2678v3 system with a Tesla K80 computer GPU for Blender, and it's a monster. Yes, I absolutely agree. If you are one of those people who actually can leverage the Teslas and you actually can use this many CPU cores, then having dual CPU configuration is really nice, especially if you don't have to pay for the electricity. So now we're gonna run the benchmark again because the last one crashed, which was very annoying. X99 is cheap with E5-2630LV3. Yes, it is cheap, but is it worth it or not? What do you think about Xeon E5-2640V3 with R9 280X in a 480 euro budget build? Well, in general, it's a very good combination, but I think 480 euros is kind of high for this build, but it also depends where you live, what kind of taxes you pay, and all other stuff. For example, for that QTJ2 build, I have GTX 1060 installed there, the 3GB version, 16 gigs of RAM, and 1TB M.2 SSD, and that all costed me just 550 euros, but of course I know where to hunt for good deals. Do you have a primary system? I only use the X99 for home labs. Well, I have just one system which I use, and I always have a test bench which is sometimes running something, but mostly the test bench is just for testing. So I have my one machine with the Xeon E5-2698v3. I have 64 gigs of RAM, and right now I'm running RTX 3080. And then I have a 4K gaming machine, which is staying in my living room and used mostly for VR. That one I use Ryzen 5 5600X, Titan V and 16 gigs of RAM. So these are the computers I have at home. Dual socket is monster for the money. It is monster for the money only in the case where you can actually leverage the power of both of the CPUs. If you're just using it for gaming or browsing internet, it is a really bad idea. Like, I have got many questions from people which are asking me which dual socket motherboard to select, and then I'm asking what they're gonna do with the computer, and they say, well, I'm mostly gaming, but I also use lots of Chrome tabs. That's why I need 128 gigs of RAM. And like, this is a completely unreasonable explanation, and you shall never go for dual socket machine in such case. I got a Dell Precision T5600 motherboard, but I don't know how I can power it since it has an old ADX connector for the power. You need to go to AliExpress and buy some extra connectors to go from a standard ATX power supply to the Dell power supply. There are no other ways, unfortunately. What GPUs do you recommend for our current situation? Well, I recommend the GPU that you can actually buy for reasonable money. Like, unfortunately, the situation on the market is so bad that whatever you can find for reasonable price, just go for it. Do chipset really affect performance? What's the difference between C612, X99 and B85? Well, chipsets don't affect performance, but they affect features. For example, C612 and X99 is basically the same chipset, it's just Intel decided to split it like consumer grade and enterprise grade, but underneath it's exactly the same, so there are no difference here. And the B85, it is limited with the USB 3 ports, with the SATA 3 ports, and it also doesn't support any overclocking, but CPU itself will be performing exactly the same with both chipsets. The Titan V is a cool GPU. Yes, absolutely. Titan V is a monster, and actually Titan V beats my RTX 3080 in DaVinci Resolve when I do videos, which is kind of surprising considering that Titan V is much older than RTX 3080. Building a first-gen Threadripper PC solely for gaming would be expensive and unjustifiable and somewhat silly. Yes, absolutely, I totally agree. Building Threadripper machine just for gaming is absolutely stupidest idea, and you shall not do that unless you can get this hardware for really cheap. So if you can get it for really cheap, like, why not? But it's good for Linux. Yeah, like, it is good for Linux. A lot of the X99 Dual with lots of tabs. Chrome crashes a lot on the X99 Dual with lots of tabs. Well, I tell you what, Chrome crashes a lot with lots of tabs. You don't need to say on X99 Dual, it just crashes a lot with lots of tabs, especially if the tabs are misbehaving. Okay, now we are going to 4K resolution and running 4 mod tests for 4K in Watch Dogs. And while I'm gonna be answering some more questions, like the whole computer freezes. Yeah, well, for me actually the whole computer freezes doesn't happen with Chrome. It's usually Chrome is crashing and saying something like the web page doesn't respond, something like that. I'm sure it will be good. Okay, that was not for me, so I will flip to the Brazilian questions. What is your assessment of the Ryzen's significant improvement over Intel? Well, first, I think it is inappropriate to say Ryzen improvement over Intel. Like, you can say AMD over Intel or Ryzen over Intel Core series, because Ryzen is a name of product and Intel is a name of a company. But in general, I think competition is really good, and it is a big shame that AMD is not able to supply enough Ryzen CPUs, so the prices are going up. But right now Intel is a budget option, and I love that. Like, it is always good to have different choices. And I do believe that Intel will be back in a few years with a really strong competition towards AMD, and I hope that Nvidia will also join the CPU market and Intel will join the GPU market, And then we will have 3 company competition in CPU and GPU divisions, which will be just awesome in my opinion. Like, I absolutely love how Ryzen 5 5600X is basically beating everything Intel can offer, but it sucks that the price for Ryzen 5 5600X is saying almost 400 euros. Like, who would buy it for that money? You much better be with the Core i5 11400F, for example. Okay, first 4K benchmark run is over. Now I need to run one more and one more. Let's see, do we have more questions? Hello from Brazil, dear friend. I am not being able to make the first M.2 slot on X99 RS9 to work. It's simple, do not recognize. The other one above the wireless slot is reading the NVMe about 900 megabytes per second. Well, Machinist X99 RS9 motherboard has 2 M.2 slots, as you have already figured out, but only one of them is PCI Express NVMe. The other one is a SATA port, and if you have SATA SSD, you need to install it in the SATA port. If you have NVMe SSD, you need to install it into the NVMe port. And there is no way you can mix SATA with NVMe and NVMe with SATA. It is what it is, and you can't do anything about it. Let's see what to do. Any chance the BIOS mode will fix it? Okay, it was about the same SSD. My whole computer locks up, does not happen on my brand name boards. Well, then you're obviously having some sort of issue. Maybe you have bad memory, because when you open lots of tabs, Chrome is consuming lots of memory, and if you have some bad memory sectors which are not at the beginning, then it may be the reason. You need to run some stress tests, you need to run mem tests and figure out what the heck is going on. I'm sorry, you're not Russian, my bad. I should have bought the EFI 2630 LV3 when it was only $20 US. Now it's 40, it doubled. Yes, you should have absolutely bought it, but only if you need it. Like, if you don't need it, don't bother. But if you need it, I would rather suggest you to wait, and the prices shall go down. Maybe not as fast as we would hope for, but if people stop buying these CPUs for this like outrageous money, Chinese will be forced to go down in price. If you're willing to pay around 40 euros, then I would rather recommend you to take a look at QNCT LJ1151 Mutant that you can get with a decent Z170 motherboard, and the price will be about the same. Okay, people, can you please write in the chat only in English, because I can speak many languages but not all languages, so please English only. If Ryzen doesn't exist, we probably still stuck at 4-core garbage from Intel. That is so true, like, literally this is so true. Intel was milking quad-core CPUs with tiny improvements on each generation and making more motherboard sockets than actually CPUs. So Ryzen is, or rather AMD, is really kicking Intel's ass and making them move on. Like, even i7 8700, which was the first Intel's mainstream 6-core CPU, was rushed out because AMD was basically forcing and annihilating Intel in productivity and raw performance. What do you think is the max for EFI 2660v3? Also, is 442 euros price good for X99 TF 2660v3, 16 gigs of RAM, RX 480, 250 gigabyte NVMe SSD, 1 terabyte HDD, cooler master, 550 watt, and a decent case. Yes, I think that's a pretty decent price, especially if you can check that everything is working before buying it. Sometimes people are trying to get rid of these Chinese setups because there are some hidden issues and computer is crashing or misbehaving in some games, and then people just don't mention it and just selling it as is. Prices of EFI 2678v3 doubled. I bought 2 last year for $85 US plus shipping. Crazy times. Yeah, absolutely. And please just don't buy it. Do I watch Build Zoid? Well, I do not watch him regularly, but I watch him every now and then, and I think he's doing cool videos. Sometimes his videos are a bit too technical for me when he's starting to explain like those crazy voltage parameters to overclock memory. I just listen it like, yeah, right, but who is gonna remember that? Like, when I actually need to overclock my memory, I will go back to this video and will pause it and then take step-by-step look which settings I need to apply. Are you going to test the Intel graphics card? Well, are you talking about the DG1 that Intel has released? In that case, no, I'm not going to review it because that graphics card is only working with certain motherboards which have video BIOS injected into the motherboard BIOS, because that graphics card does not have video BIOS onto the graphics card. Like, this is absolutely stupidest idea by Intel, why they made it. Like, they have limited usage of this graphics card to only certain machines like Dell and HP. That's why I'm not gonna test it. But as soon as Intel is releasing something that everyone can use and I can just test on my regular computer, I will surely do some tests, or at least I hope so. Are you going, or sorry, that was same question. I just made a system with the 1920X. I found that RAM speed for gaming is very important. I got it to 3400 CL16. What RAM speed are you running? As you can see on my screen right now, I'm running my RAM speed at DDR4 3333 CL14, and that is better than DDR4 3400 CL16. Like, latency with the 3333 CL14 is better. AMD disturbed Intel at the perfect moment. Maybe hiring all of the Intel engineers developers wasn't such a bad idea. I really doubt that AMD hired all of the Intel developers. I think even if AMD would be 10 times as big as it is right now, it would still not be able to hire all Intel engineers and developers, because Intel is just so much bigger than AMD in amount of money and amount of development, amount of human power, and it's just like two completely different companies. AMD is much smaller. Thanks so much for your channel. I love you. Greetings from Poland. Well, greetings back from Sweden. Thanks for watching my videos and thanks for the support. I am aware, unfortunately I'm aware of Intel, but I was curious. Well, I guess everyone is curious and it is part of our nature to be curious. I think it is good. So, now I am done with the Watch Dogs Legion benchmarks, at least I think so. Yes, I have got all my 10 benchmark rounds. So I can get out of this game, which is rather stupid game. Let's see what else I gotta test. I want something that I don't really have to bother about it too much, so I can keep answering questions. So maybe we can take a DSC World. What do you think? That one has a rather boring benchmark, but okay. I guess I'm gonna start with the Mafia 2. And we see how much time will be left. Maybe I will also do something else, maybe Call of Duty. So let's see what other questions I have from my Brazilian subscribers. Okay, here goes Mafia. Let's start it. In several tests of yours, we see you measure practically everything on the motherboard. What do you think of the quality and structure of these Chinese motherboards? Well, first of all, there are very many different Chinese motherboards. Some of them are complete crap and I just feel disgusted by touching it, and others are, I would say, rather decent, and some of them I even feel like comfortable to work with these motherboards. So it really depends on what motherboard sample you have in your hands, and I can't give you like a general answer. Big fan, I admire your intelligence. You are self-taught, or did you, or I guess you meant self-taught, or did you learn this in school? Well, to be honest with you, I almost didn't go to school. Like, I was living about 150 kilometers from my school, and it was, as you understand, pretty complicated to go to the school every day. So I was mostly studying at home, and then by the end of the month and sometimes by the end of a quarter, I was just going to school to take my exams. So that's how it was for me. My throat is starting to give up. I guess I'll need to find something to drink. Oh no, Mafia, please don't crash. Oh, come on. I am from Portugal. Well, welcome from Sweden. What's your name and how many languages do you speak? My name is Konstantin, but many people cannot say that, so they just call me Konstantin, and that's perfectly fine. Like, Konstantin is another version of my name, so that's okay for me. And I think Mafia has crashed, so I'll have to kill it, I guess, with the task manager and start it all over again. Maybe it thought that it is too many CPU cores available, it cannot run it. Oh, now we are having some beautiful artifacts on the screen. I guess I will have to restart the machine because this thingy just ignores me. So while it is restarting, I can answer some more questions. Thank you very much for your channel. You're welcome. Thank you for watching and attending. Hello, I bought the Tinsha X99 motherboard, LJ2011 version 3, and I'm stuck with LED code B7 with orange memory slot and B0 with black memory slot. I'm using Xeon E5 2620 V3. Oh, come on, this is classical problem. People are buying DDR3 motherboard and DDR4 only CPU. Xeon E5 2620 V3 is not going to work with the DDR3 memory. It doesn't matter what you do and which memory slots you use. It's simply not going to work with the DDR3 memory. You need a DDR4 motherboard or a DDR3 CPU. Your videos and your help already saved me when I started with a Xeon, and that influenced me to set up the channel here in Brazil. Congratulations on the content. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to help, and let's hope that community in Brazil will keep growing and will support your channel. Now we are back to Windows. Let's start MSI Afterburner again, Steam again. Like, this is this kind of troubles you are getting in, and you're spending lots of time to do all of these benchmarks, because some games, they are just misbehaving with certain hardware, or for example, you're running your benchmarks and then in the middle of benchmark, Steam is just shutting down and saying, okay, I need to upgrade now. And it doesn't ask you if you want to upgrade, if you don't want to upgrade. It just says, okay, I'm gonna be upgrading now. Like, these things are taking so much more time that you think you would spend on doing benchmarks. And actually, I was thinking that I will be releasing this video on this Saturday, means yesterday. Instead, I'm still benchmarking Threadripper 1920X today, and that is one of the reasons why I have decided to have this live stream. Please tell your friend to make a BIOS that supports resizable bar. Well, if you're talking about BIOS engineer, he can do you the BIOS with resizable bar support if first you give him a graphics card which supports resizable bar, which means you give him an RTX 30 series or AMD 600 series graphics card, and pay him for his work. Like, if you're willing to do that, he will definitely do the BIOS for you, like, don't worry. Let's see what we... I guess I will try to start the benchmark first and then I can read some more questions. So I need to have full screen because otherwise the performance in window and the full screen mode is not the same. So let's try this time. Okay, this time it works. Good. I need high video settings. It is good. Full screen, VSync off. Okay, good. Now I can go to the extras and launch the benchmark. Okay, so while the benchmark is running, I can read some questions. QTB1 costs 230-240 euros, about the same as Ryzen 7 3700X. What would you pick for me? Power consumption doesn't matter as much. I would definitely go with the Ryzen 7 because QTB1 is about the same in gaming as Ryzen 5 3600. And in productivity it is slightly better. So Ryzen 7 3700X will beat QTB1. So if the price is the same, definitely go with Ryzen. Do you think Threadripper 1920X is worth the price bump over the Xeon so far? Well, Threadripper 1920X is not available on AliExpress to just go there and buy it, so the price is a really questionable subject because some people can get them for really cheap, others can't. As I mentioned before in the video, I have got a combo of motherboard, CPU and Noctua CPU cooler for just 150 euros, and in that case, yeah, it's really worth over the Xeon E5. Let's see, what do we have here? E5 4627V3, 10 cores, 3.2 GHz turbo, still relatively cheap. Well, these E5 4600 CPUs, they usually have reduced memory controller, reduced speed of the memory controller, and that's why you're getting less performance compared to the same number of cores with the same speed as E5 2600. That's why I'm not sure if you shall go with the Xeon or with the Ryzen or Threadripper. Like, always check the prices and the specs. Have you got any problems where the GPU RPM doesn't show on HW monitor MSI afterburner? My GPU running at 100% fan because of that. Well, I think the problem is your GPU and not MSI Afterburner. MSI Afterburner cannot make the GPU to run at 100% unless you instruct it to do so. Okay, I'm actually surprised with this result. 24 FPS on minimum in Mafia 2 for Threadripper is a rather decent result. Will you have a BIOS on Mi 899 for Machinist RS9 without the Intel logo but with the Machinist logo? No, I'm not going to do that because Machinist did not pay me to produce good BIOS, and since I am doing BIOS modifications on my own, why shall I advertise for Machinist store? By the way, if you want to have Machinist logo, you can just take my BIOS and inject Machinist logo on your own. I'm going to test ESXi 6.7. Since the ESXi 7 did not work on the X99 boards, I wanted to share my experience since your content is awesome. Well, first of all, thanks for the support, and second of all, forgive me my ignorance. I'm not quite sure what is ESXi. Is it some kind of emulator or some games, or what it is? E5 2640 V3 plus a GTX 960 4 gigs is a good combo. Yes, it is surely a good combo, but again, it depends on how much you have to pay for that. But in general, yes, it's a good combo. Okay, since the chat questions are answered, let's go back to the Brazilian questions. Which Chinese motherboards have better structure on the X79 or X99 platforms? Which one has the best cost benefit in the current situation? Well, unfortunately, right now, the answer would be none of them. Like, the prices for the CPUs are so high that it makes almost no sense to buy them. But in general, for X79, I would probably go for the Mini ATX version, which is called version 282. It's a small green motherboard which has basically everything on the motherboard. Let me see if I can find it on AliExpress, and if I can find it, I will send a link in the chat for the X79. Yeah, I think I have found it. And it's actually still available for a kind of decent price. For about 50 euros you can buy it. I remember buying these motherboards for just like 42 euros. Let me find where is my chat window so I can paste the link. Okay. So this one I would select for X79. And for X99, I would either go with Huananzhi X99, TF, F8, AD4, BD4, or I would go with Machinist X99 RS9. The other motherboards I think make basically no sense. So the second benchmark run is over and I need a couple more. So going back to extras, benchmark, and keep running it. ESXi is a type 1 hypervisor VM. So it's some sort of a virtualization. Yeah, I got it. Well, you might have to tweak some BIOS settings on X99 to make the latest version work, but I'm not sure, and sorry I can't help here. But yeah, like you need to figure it out. Maybe there are some hidden BIOS features. You can access them with the AMIB CPU tool, and that one can give you access to these hidden options. Okay, seems like some people in chat can help you with the ESXi. E5 4627 v3 bus speed at 8 gigatransfer per second against E5 2680 v3 at 9.6 gigatransfers per second. Thanks for the catch. Yeah, exactly. That's what I meant. The memory controller frequency is reduced on the 4600 CPUs. Can the Machinist X79 motherboard do turbo boost on Xeon E5 2620 v2? No, it's not possible. Turbo boost unlock is a hack which is only working with the Xeon E5 v3 CPUs and only with those which have locked CPU multiplier. If you try to use E5 1650 v3 or E5 1660 v3 with this hack or Core i7 CPU, most likely your motherboard will not even start. So, and no, I will not be able to figure out how to do that on V4 CPUs, so people please stop asking me about that. What is your view on the reuse of processors, where people from several countries are buying from China, avoiding new processors due to the high prices practiced? This is a very controversial subject. Like, from one side, you may believe that by buying the second-hand Xeon CPUs, you're helping environment by not buying the new CPUs and reusing the old stuff. But in the reality, you're buying not just the second-hand CPU, you're also buying a Chinese X99 motherboard. And when you're buying Chinese X99 motherboard, have you ever thought about what kind of environment implications Chinese factories have, and if they follow any standards? Do they calculate how many chemicals they throw into the atmosphere and how they treat their employees while manufacturing these X99 and X79 motherboards? So I would say this is rather a coin with two sides. On one side, you're kind of helping environment by reusing the same CPUs. On the other side, you are sponsoring Chinese factories which are not known to be environmentally friendly. So you can see it both ways. I'm not going to say that you shall or shall not do that. Huananzhi X99 F8 has how to connect the RGB of the air cooler on the motherboard, or does not have compatibility. No, so far I have not seen any Chinese X99 motherboard which would have an addressable RGB header, even though on the early revisions of Huananzhi boards, there is some header which is has a title of RGB. That header is not compatible with any CPU coolers. And I have also talked to the Huananzhi manufacturer, and they said that it is not functioning, this header, and they have removed it into the latest revisions, so people stop attempting to use it and connect devices to there. Okay, anyone know why the X79 is linked above? Is it a good one? It is linked above because my Brazilian people were asking me, or my Brazilian subscribers were asking me, which motherboard I would consider to be the best value for money for X79 and X99, and I have linked it above because I needed to somehow share the information. That's basically it. Okay, so the next question from my Brazilian friends: what is the difference between unlock and undervolt, and what are the consequences on basic motherboards and the risk of these changes in BCLK for any type of processor, including today's Ryzen? Okay, I guess there are multiple questions in one. So first thing, what is Turbo Boost Unlock? Every Intel CPU has multiple different configurations at which speed to work. So for example, if you take EFI2678v3, it has maximum turbo boost frequency of 3.3 GHz. But according to Intel, this speed will be achieved only if only one or two CPU cores are used at the same time. And what is Turbo Boost Unlock is a special hack or special BIOS modification when we fool the CPU and let it run at 3.3 GHz on all CPU cores, even if all CPU cores are used. So in this case, we are kind of fooling Intel calculating algorithm to calculate the speed of the CPU for this particular workload and force all CPU cores to run on the maximum turbo frequency. So this is the Turbo Boost Unlock. Now, even if you have Turbo Boost Unlock, your CPU still has a Tdp limitation. Tdp limitation is how much your CPU is allowed to consume electricity. So if you apply your Turbo Boost Unlock and force all CPU cores to run at the maximum turbo frequency, the CPU will obviously start to consume more electricity, and at some point it will start to throttle and downclock itself back to 3 GHz, maybe 2.9 GHz, depends on the workload. And in this case, we can try to reduce CPU voltage, because if the voltage is reduced, then the amount of electricity consumed is also decreased. And in that case, CPU can clock itself slightly higher, but the overall power consumption with undervolting and without undervolting will be the same, because the CPU with undervolting will be running at higher frequency and providing better performance, but still consuming the same amount of power. This is how it works with the Xeon E5 CPUs. What do you think about this motherboard? This is which I need a name or a link. If only the motherboards are cheap, then it would be a great build option for me. How much the motherboard cost? Well, I think this is a discussion between someone in my chat, so I'm not gonna bother answering that one. But let's go back to the Brazilian questions. So what are the implications of undervolting or reducing CPU voltage? When you reduce CPU voltage, but CPU still keeps consuming the same amount of electricity, this means that electrical current which is flowing through VRM will be higher. And the higher electrical current is, the less efficient VRM is. This means that VRM will be heating up more than it would be heating up without CPU undervolting. That's why it is important to keep your VRM temperatures under control if you plan to do Turbo Boost Unlock and CPU undervolting or voltage reduction. Regarding the BCLK overclocking with Ryzen CPUs and with the Xeon CPUs, I think these days it's basically useless, and I would not attempt to do that because, well, you are risking to get unstable system, you're risking to get some damages, and in some cases, if you do BCLK overclock, your PCI Express slots or M.2 slots may stop working, and that is really, really bad. While the performance gains are so small that I don't find it justifiable. Like, this is just my opinion, but you're obviously free to do BCLK overclocking if you want to. I built a quad Opteron computer, custom BIOS, water cooled and overclocked it. It truly is beautiful. Not very good for gaming, but leaves my Ryzen 5600X in the dust in Cinebench R20. Well, look, Cinebench R20 is just one unique workload, and if you have like Cinema 4D workloads where you actually need to do some renders, well, that's a good thing to have a quad Opteron setup, especially if you don't bother about the electricity consumption, because I know that these machines consume lots of power. We were talking about the Threadripper 1920X for $485 US, which is kinda a good price, I think, but the X399 motherboards from them cost a fortune. Yes, unfortunately, finding a Threadripper 1920X, 1950X is not that hard, but X399 motherboards are rather difficult to find for a good price. This is because many people have upgraded their Threadripper setup to Threadripper 2950X, and then they are selling the 2019 50X CPUs, but the motherboards are obviously not available in the needed quantities. Okay, so let's go to the next Brazilian question. What is your point of view about overclocking? Is it beneficial method to the user? This question doesn't really have an answer. Like, you always need to look at what platform you are talking about. For example, if you have i7 5820K on an X99 motherboard, then you definitely have to overclock it, because otherwise the CPU will perform basically just like i5-2620v3. But with overclock, this one can be quite decent even today. Now, if you, for example, take Ryzen 5 5600X or Core i5-10600K, these CPUs are pretty pointless to overclock, because Intel and AMD already pushed these CPUs to basically absolute limit. Maybe you can squeeze out 100 more megahertz for much more power consumption and much higher voltage, and I think this is absolutely unjustifiable. What age is your cat and what its name? It's beautiful. Thanks. My cat is about 4 or 5 months old and it's called Zion. It's not Xeon, it is Zion. You're right, almost 900 watt. I only use it on the weekends. Well, so here is the cat we are talking about. He was sleeping, but now he's delivered for transformation or demonstration. Meow. No, he does not want to be posing for the camera. He just wants to keep sleeping. Can I get some water, please? Okay. What do you think about upgrading i7 6700 non-K 3.7 GHz on B150 paired with a 1080 for 1080p gaming and Adobe for used 10400F with old 2400 MHz RAM and a new motherboard, or go for a Mutant? Oh, well, that's a difficult question. I need to take a sip of water. If it would be me, I would just plug in a Mutant onto my LGA 1151 B150 motherboard and would be happy with that. But for you, if the computer is critical for you and you need to make sure that it is working 100% stable, then I would just upgrade entire platform and then just go with it. Like, you can always sell your previous setup because i7 is still kind of pricey on the second-hand market. In relation to Mutant's LJ1151, with the relationship between low TDP and high frequencies, do you think they would have a long life? Well, the long life of the CPU itself is probably guaranteed unless you somehow damage it with wrong installation of a CPU cooler. But on the other side, this CPU is mounted on a custom-made Chinese PCB, and that custom-made Chinese PCB is probably not the best quality, and that PCB might go out of order if something goes wrong. Well, it's really hard to say. Hello, are there any workloads where Threadripper with 4 channels of memory is more efficient than Ryzen of the same generation with 2 channels? Yes, absolutely, there are many of them. For example, if you're running multiple virtual machines, Threadripper will be much better than Ryzen. I think I need to open a window because it's getting way too hot in here. Does E5 2678 will go down in next few months? I have no clue if the prices will go down, but I hope and I think they will go down because it makes no sense to keep the prices this high. People will just keep buying the i5 10400 and maybe i5 11400 and other CPUs on the LJ1200 socket. So yeah, I think the price for Xeon CPUs will and should go down. Ryzen first generation is still good for its price. Ryzen first generation is really bad for gaming, so if you're buying a gaming computer, I would rather buy a Mutant and a second-hand Z170 motherboard, or at least Ryzen second generation. Of course, Ryzen third generation is better, but Ryzen first generation I would avoid for gaming. Which one is better? Core i7 11700 for about $340 or Core i9 10900F for about $350? I would definitely go with the Core i9 if you don't need the iGPU. If you need integrated GPU, then you need to go with the i7 because the 10900F does not have the integrated GPU. How to know which is the best BIOS for my Huananzhi X99 F8? Should I use the one you created optimized? Well, how to know? You first need to answer what do you want from the BIOS and what CPU you're actually using, because I can't decide for you. It all depends on what you actually want to achieve from your motherboard. Okay, let's run one more Mafia benchmark, this time with the MSI Afterburner overlay. I have a bad X370 Taichi. It cannot overclock memory past 3000 CL14. I would say this is a good X370 motherboard, especially if you're having the first generation Ryzen. Like 3000 DDR4 3000 CL14, this is a very good result for this combination. This PC is for my boyfriend, so I can set it up and look after it daily. Well, I hope your boyfriend will be happy, and thanks for the answer, or thanks for the support and feedback. Okay, let's take one more Brazilian question. Do you believe that in the future there may be the possibility to unlock on Xeon V4? Come on, again this question. No, I don't think there will be any possibilities to unlock V4 CPUs. At least from what I know, Intel has closed, shut down the doors. No, you can't unlock Turbo Boost on V4 CPUs. You have 2700X. Well, I actually have had similar experience. I had MSI X370 motherboard, but it was not Taichi. It was some other. I don't remember which one it was, but it was also MSI X370. And first I had Ryzen 7 1700X, and I had my Samsung B-Die DDR4 memory modules, which are DDR4 3200 CL14, and they could never run faster than DDR4 3000. And even after I upgraded to Ryzen 7 2700X, I was still not able to run it any faster than DDR4 3000 on that X370 motherboard. But on MSI B450 Tomahawk motherboard, I was able to run them at DDR4 3200. So this is just a common problem for the X370 chipset and the early generation of Ryzen. Overclocking memories has considerable gains. Again, it all comes down to what CPU, what platform you are using. In some cases, it gives you considerable gains. For example, with Ryzen 5 2600, Ryzen 5 3600, and even Ryzen 5 5600. If you overclock your memory and reduce memory timings, that helps a lot. But with the Xeon E5 CPUs, most of them have locked memory multiplier, and they are locked for overclocking, so you just can't do that. Okay, now it's time to test Mafia in 4K. Changing the settings, saving it. Yes, I want to save it. And now let's go back to extras and run more benchmarks, this time in 4K. Thank you for your answers. You're welcome. Thanks for coming up and joining the live stream. Does adjusting memory timings really improve gaming performance and productivity? Yes, it does, but it all depends on how much, because some memories, they have default timings pretty good, and others memories have default timings pretty awful. For example, if you're buying cheap Clistre or any other cheap Chinese memory, they usually have very high, very disgusting memory timings, and they do that to make sure that the memory will be stable everywhere with any possible platform. And usually you can decrease memory timings. For example, if you buy DDR4 2600, the default will be CL19, which is really bad, and usually you can decrease it to at least CL14, which gives in certain workloads you can get up to 15% extra performance. I have RX 58, I have RX 580 4GB, which I use as eGPU with my i7 3630QM. I want to make PC. Which motherboard and CPU you recommend for this graphics card? Yes, I think the best would be Core i5-10400F or an LJ1151 Mutant. The answer is correct there in the chat. Okay, one more question here goes. Are heatsinks on memories and VRAM really effective? Well, in general, if a heatsink is applied properly, yes, it is effective. But many Chinese are applying heatsink on a disgusting glue, so your memory stick is coming like this, and then you have a heatsink glued on top, but they are using either very bad thermally conductive glue or not thermally conductive glue, and in that case the heat transport from the memory stick to the heatsink is really bad, and in that case it can theoretically even harm the thermals of your memory and not help. And also there were some examples with Chinese motherboards where they had a heatsink which was not mounted properly onto the VRM MOSFETs, or the thermal pad was not covering entire VRM zone, and in that case one MOSFET was trapped under the radiator and was not touching the radiator, and hot air was all trapped there, so the thermals were really bad. But if the heatsink is attached and applied properly, then yes, it really helps. How many cores do you think will gaming and streaming use in the next year or few years? I think in the next year or few years, 8-10 cores will be enough, as long as you have semi-decent cores. For today, you will be just fine with 6-8 cores. What do you think about the interpose of notebook chips? Well, I think that it is very good that we have an option to bypass Intel limitation for the LJ1151 platform. I think it was very disgusting by Intel that they had 4 cores, and who knows how many 4 cores they would be doing if Ryzen would not arrive. And then they had LJ1151 version 1 and LJ1151 version 2, which are physically the same and they are compatible with each other. But Intel just decided, no, we want to cut off upgrade options for the old platform, so people are forced to buy new motherboards and we get more money. I think this is very disgusting, and I think it's very good that Chinese are making these laptop mutants and give people with old motherboards an option to upgrade to 6 and 8 core CPUs. This is my take on this subject. Hello, I would like to know if it is safe to put a passive M.2 cooler on the VRM in a Huananzhi X79 green 2.49p. You did it on a X99TF. It seems to give good results. Yes, it is safe to do that as long as you use good thermal paths between the M.2 heatsink and the original radiator, and as long as you have good airflow in your chassis. And what is Mutant? It's CPU from Intel. You talk about Xeons. Okay, so Mutant is a CPU which is a laptop CPU mounted on a special PCB, and that PCB is mounted onto the LJ1151 socket. Let me show you. I think I might have... So, here I have got one for a demonstration. This is a Gigabyte B365 motherboard, and here you have a Mutant CPU installed. So I had to remove the original bucket or original mounting which was used here, and I had to install this is the CPU, and this one is the special cover to keep the CPU in the socket. So this is a Mutant CPU, and these Mutant CPUs are originally designed as laptop CPUs, but Chinese have figured out how to make them work on a standard LGA 1151 motherboards. Okay, videos on LJ1151 mutants, but if you are not into weird CPUs, just buy normal 10400F. Oh yeah, that's true. I absolutely agree. If you are not up to messing up with all sorts of different hardware, and if you're not up to writing a modified BIOS, then better don't mess with it. Better just buy, for example, B460 or B560 motherboard and a 10400F CPU. B560 is obviously better because you can overclock memory, but B460 is limited to DDR4 2666 with the 10400F. Then for good quality 60 FPS, I would say 8 to 10 cores should be fine for quite some time. Yes, I agree with this. But it also depends on what kind of cores you have. For example, if you have 10 cores from X79, that will not be enough. What are your personal references and indications about hardware, and what for which user profile would you better serve, advanced or beginner in the hardware? I'm sorry, my Brazilian friends, I don't really understand what the question means, so I will skip it. What should a user interested in changing platforms observe before buying a Chinese motherboard? First, the user which is interested in changing the platform should be answering the question why. If your computer is not powerful enough, then you need to check possibilities to upgrade your computer to do your needs. If it is not possible to upgrade, then you need to obviously upgrade entire platform. And in that case, you need to gather your requirements for the computer and do research and figure out what is the best value for money to complete your specific task. Like, there is no specification if it is for gaming, for productivity, and for what budget, and also in which country, like which shops are available. For example, if Amazon is available or not available. Do you know why the X99 CPU market is so expensive since maybe a month? Yes, I do know. These Xeon E5 CPUs have 40 PCI Express lanes, and these 40 PCI Express lanes can be used to attach fast PCI Express NVMe SSD. And these days there is a new cryptocurrency which is mining on SSDs. It is Chia cryptocurrency, but it is also another cryptocurrency called Filecoin, which needs lots of fast NVMe SSD storage. And that is why the miners in China decided to just buy hundreds and hundreds of these CPUs. And obviously Chinese sellers decided to increase the price to be able to capitalize on this SSD crypto mining boom. I have an HP Z420 PC with a 1650 V2. What do you think? Is it worth it to buy any Chinese X79 backup motherboard if it dies, or should I buy something newer, mainly for medium gaming? I think you shall definitely buy something newer, because even if your HP X79 motherboard dies, you will not be able to install your Chinese X79 motherboard into your HP chassis, because it uses different mounting, it uses different power supply connector, it uses different fan connectors, and you will just go through all sorts of pain and troubles. So just don't bother, buy something newer. Okay, one more question from my Brazilian friends. What do you think of these notebook processors adapted to the LJ1151 platform? Negative and positive points assessed in your vision. I think I have already covered this pretty much in the video, so I'm gonna skip this question. Do you think that these notebook processors adapted for desktop could become a low-cost outlet for the general public? And do you think that there may be a quantity needed for the demand? No and no. First of all, it is illegal to do what Chinese do. Like, if someone will be trying to make a business out of it, Intel will most likely apply charges on them, and people who are trying to run this on a business scale in US, America, Latin America or Europe will get into deep troubles, either from customs or from Intel representatives. So this is more for a very niche personal market for people who like to tweak with hardware and don't mind to do some illegal stuff, or at least the stuff which is illegal according to Intel. Your opinion about the current market and the vision about the current situation with the limited supply of hardware, and also about mining. Well, as anything else, there is a up and down, rise and dawn for everything, and crypto mining will go up and down as well. So after a while, the crypto mining boom will be over and the prices hopefully will go back to normal. But in general, I think the demand for semiconductors and for the processors will just go up, and hopefully we will get factories in different countries, not just in China and some other countries, so that will help to fulfill the limited supply. QTJ1 test will be on the channel. It might be, I have not decided yet, but I have talked to the seller of AliExpress mutants, and he is very interested to see me testing QTJ1, so he's also interested if I mention him. So we discussed a little bit that maybe he will give me a small discount if I buy the CPU. But right now I have already a few videos which I work on, so I need to finish these ones first before I buy something new. Thanks for your knowledge. Greetings from Chile. Well, thank you for joining and thanks for the support. Greetings from Sweden. And the last question from my Brazilian friends. Would you like to leave a message for the Brazilians and spectators who attend you? Yes, I would like to leave your message. First of all, thanks a lot. Like from my YouTube statistics, Brazilians are the #1 who are watching my channel. This is very surprising, but it is what it is. So thanks a lot for the support, and I hope my videos are gonna help you to get your budget-friendly gaming computers. And second, please do not use Portuguese when talking to me. Like, I don't understand Portuguese. Sometimes I can read the message and I can kind of understand what you mean, but if you would like to have a communication with me, please use English. QNCT, yeah. This is the other CPU that I'm also interested to test, and I'm also actually interested to buy like 510 of QNCT, because very often people are coming to me with old LG 1151 computers, and they have like quad-core i5s or dual-core i3s, and they need an upgrade, and QNCT would be a perfect option. So I'm thinking about it. Maybe it will come, but I can't promise when. So I think this stream is already running for quite a long time, and I have answered all the questions. I have tested 2 of the games that I had to test for my Threadripper 1920X benchmarks. I guess it's time to say goodbye. Thanks all for joining today. I hope it was interesting and useful. If you have any ideas what to do for the next videos, feel free to join my Discord. Link you will find in the video description, and there you can also text me. But if I don't answer immediately, please understand that I have tons of messages to answer. I try to answer every message, but I simply can't do that. So, thanks everyone for joining. Hope it was interesting. Bye bye.